I wanted to apologize in advance. I actually recorded this about 2 weeks ago, and it was based on something that I had written 2 weeks before that. And, the mental stuff has just really been kicking my ass lately. So, hope you enjoy. Thanks for listening. Whatever's been happening with me mentally is thankfully taking it easier on me today. I was in a real funk I hadn't been able to shake the past few days. The misery of mental health illness is real and as pervasive as any physical pain, to me at least. I was thinking I really need to talk more about some of the techniques I use to help me out with all this. I mean, it's one thing to sit here and keep talking about what's going on with me, but I want to help people too. And today I wanted to talk about the importance of mindfulness. And for me, that starts with knowing how and when to breathe. Oh, come on, man. Didn't you see the water boy? The medulla oblongata controls your breathing. Dum dum. No, no, it's different than that. The first night I was in the hospital, the nurse gave me this thing called an incentive spirometer. I've seen them around hospital rooms over the years, never really bothered to ask what they were used for. The nurse instructed me to inhale as strongly as I could for as long as I could, which would cause this disc in the device to rise up, showing how much capacity my lungs had for taking in oxygen. Prior to my surgery, this was a piece of cake. I could max that thing out easily. Bear in mind, at the time, I had totally convinced myself I was ready for everything that was about to happen. I hadn't begun this kind of mental awakening just yet. I don't know really what I didn't really know what I had in store for me. The first time I was encouraged to use the spirometer after my surgery was another matter entirely. Where I'd easily hit the top end of the scale about 2 days earlier, I was only barely able to hit the bottommost mark on that thing. And all of a sudden, it seemed like everyone wanted to test my breathing. So I spent a lot of time with that thing. And it sucked, literally and figuratively. For the first day or so, the hardest thing was finding and keeping my breath. It was like my lungs had shrunk. Some of that was post surgery stuff that you have to deal with. It's all pretty icky, so I won't mention it here. During a visit with one of my physical therapists, she said something that really never left me. She asked me to talk about my anxiety. See, up until that point, my definition of anxiety was very transactional. In my mind, anxiety was something that happened to you, not something you had. You got anxious before a big event, or the thought of something makes you nervous. But anxiety is really a lot more than that. For starters, until I acknowledge the anxiety present in my everyday life, I would have never thought I had all this chronic anxiety. And once I saw it, it was clear as day to me what it was and how it was interfering with my life. That morning, as I was practicing the right way to breathe, in through your nose, slight pause, exhale through your mouth, you could hear these audible catches in my breath. It's kind of hard to articulate, but it's like your whole body hesitates for just a second. Therapist keyed in on that sound. We talked about it for a minute, and she gave me this trick to work through all that anxiety in my breath. My therapist told me I needed to get better physically and mentally for the breathing exercises to help. The first step was to identify where the anxiety was in my breath. What? At first, I thought this was all about getting me to calm down in the moment. Breathe in, breathe out, you're calming down. We worked on breathing through the anxiety. I started to notice that as I inhaled and exhaled, it didn't feel full. I wasn't taking in a full breath. And there were these like little catches and pains in my chest. Like it felt like pressure there. And my exhale just didn't feel natural and didn't feel normal. The trick for me is to keep breathing until I don't feel those hesitations. It's fair to say the first time somebody explained this to me, I was really skeptical. I mean, parts of this sounded a little too new age for me. I mean, you can only grow so much in 2 days, I suppose. After about 2 days in, though, I gotta admit, the whole thing mentally started to make a lot more sense for me. I feel like life was really kicking my ass back then. I mean, bypass surgery got me physically. pandemic was all that solitude and loneliness, and my psyche was just in awful shape. My depression's in there doing its thing, making me hate everything about myself. So now I'm sitting there thinking, great, now I got all this freaking anxiety, and what am I supposed to do with this? Look, there had been days during the pandemic where it honestly felt like my head was going to explode at times. We've all been there. There were some days during the pandemic where the whole workday felt like one big, long, loud, endless scream. And when the scream finally ended, I'd be confused, as if all that tension was normal somehow. I also remember feeling tense. It's really hard to explain, but it's kind of like my insides were inside of a wetsuit about a size and a half too small. By the way, you should really try sleeping through all this shit sometime. It is awesome. I feel like it's important to establish context like this when I get into these things. 90 days before my surgery, I told some friends of mine that I didn't laugh anymore. I mean, I found humor in things, but I didn't laugh. Like when I was younger, man, I was notorious for laughing, like until I got the hiccups. If you've never experienced it, I also laugh very silently, more or less. Very little noise comes out. My entire head turns bright red. I can't breathe for quite a while. And yeah, I snort when something really, really, really gets to me. I'm happy to report I can laugh again now, freely and often, in fact. There's this not too distant picture of me sitting with my Friday night crew, laughing just like that. I'm so glad I was able to figure that out for myself. That's my natural state. So if that's my natural state, then how did I get the reputation as a grumpy old man on social media? Easy. Facebook was my outlet for processing anxiety. All the shit that I was letting eat me from the inside, all that anxiety I talked about up front could be vented out harmlessly to social media. And I could do it in what I felt like was a largely humorous way. It gave me a chance to amplify my opinions, to give me some tiny bit of legitimacy internally, for people to actually listen and respond, even if it was just a stupid joke. This is when social media was just starting to become a tire fire, by the way. There was kind of this different, playful energy to my grumpiness. I was never really that mad at anyone. I still have my opinions, obviously, but honestly, they're just opinions. And I'm not trying to influence anyone, remember? I do my best to respect everyone's opinions. We can disagree, even vehemently, but I'll always try and be as respectful as I can. You know, I just realized I was tired of being invisible even back then, except I didn't know that's what it was yet. A lot of my anxiety comes from never feeling like I had a voice, that I mattered, that people knew I existed. I know I've always mattered to everyone in my personal life, friends and family. I wanted acceptance beyond that group. I needed to feel like I fit in with everybody else. I wanted to feel like I thought normal people felt. My whole life I've tried to use humor as a coping tool, but I've only ever felt comfortable being funny around people I know and trust. There's something about not being laughed at, but being laughed with. And that humor is part of my natural state too. If I'm making jokes, it's my ideal operating model. It, I cannot overstate the absolute joy it's been discovering this for myself. I know I still need to keep pushing myself though. When things aren't working, sometimes you just got to shake some shit up. So I started daring myself, and I'm daring myself, still on a daily basis as an attempt to break out of whatever this shell is I feel like I needed to keep around me. And I can get out there and actually experience life. But that shell wants to grow back all the time. It's a lot of work keeping it away, honestly. Spending however long it is for me to get a few thoughts out of my head in some kind of expression of positivity and gratitude and peace brings so many things to ground for me mentally. Look, I'm a giant skeptic. I ask questions about everything. like to the point of distraction at times, because my bullshit detector is pretty highly attenuated. If I don't feel like someone's being genuine with me, to be true to my values, I've got to call it for what it is. Obviously, over the years, my tone has softened considerably. My eye rolling has dialed way the hell back. I don't think I've called anything stupid or guaranteed to fail in a few years, and I'm playing a lot nicer now. I used to think I had this superpower to detect this when other people clearly couldn't see when they were being fleeced. But people generally know what's going on. That's been a really cool thing that I've discovered, is that when you can feel comfortable enough to operate in certain circles, that there's a lot more commonality there than you ever would have imagined. And knowing that there's that common ground, that other people at least see some of what I'm seeing and listening to, that helps a lot. Look, I'm about to say the most new agey thing I may have ever said in my life. Positivity begets positivity. If there was ever anyone who could have been skeptical of a claim like that, it's me. But I was wrong. I've been talking about common ground as a little bit of an aside. I really feel this connection with the latest season of Fargo, not for the evil represented in the show, but for the themes of the importance of finding common ground, forgiveness, facing one's tormentors, and yeah, joy. I don't want to give any spoilers. The arc of this season has a message that needs to be heard far and wide, as far as I'm concerned. The final episode was breathtaking to me and meaningful in some really deeply personal ways. The other part, the anxiety fuel in all of this for me, has been trying to build and sustain a career with such an acutely aware bullshit detector, but needing to survive in an organization of any size. I've been working on the story of how I got into and then back into IT for quite a while now. I might work on it a little bit more tonight. Spoiler alert, I was essentially asked to leave my first proper IT job because I couldn't be nice with two people. Maybe that's what college would have taught me, how to play better with others. I'm pretty sure college is about a lot more than that, but I was such a spaz and a nerd and professional new kid. Honestly, the thought of moving and having to integrate into yet another social circle terrified me. I just wanted to do the work as well as it could be done. Look, I feel like I've kind of gone all over the map with this one, so I'm going to kind of wrap things up for tonight. I told you guys I'd be back. It's too good not to become a more permanent thing with me. Take care.